If the Nintendo Switch is your first console, then you may only know Fire Emblem in this context.
I live to fight. Roy wins. Not an option. Your skills were remarkable.
Smash Bros aside, the series began in Japan and now consists of 16 main games. Marth and Roy being so popular in Smash convinced Nintendo to give the series a shot in the rest of the world. That was back in 2003. Now, in 2019, Fire Emblem Three Houses has been released on the Switch, giving us a version of the game we can play anywhere. Fire Emblem Three Houses is technically a tactical turn-based RPG, but when you take a closer look, the game actually has a few main themes running through it. Your character is asked to take the role of a professor for the Church of Seros at the Garreg Mach Monastery. You look after a number of students and guide their development into fierce fighters that assist you throughout the story. This is done in a few different ways, including a Persona 5 style system that lets you choose what activity to do that week. The options range from exploring the monastery, organising seminars, taking part in battles, or just resting for a week. Three Houses' biggest choice, however, choosing your house, dictates not only the students that you look after, but also the story. The battle system plays like any Fire Emblem game, but if you've not played these, then you can compare it to games like Wargroove, which released this year, or one of my all-time favourite older series, Advanced Wars. You take command of a number of units, usually 10, and aim to either completely rout your enemy or kill their commander. Some levels have extra little requirements, such as not letting the enemy reach a certain area. These shake things up a little bit and add some diversity to the missions. You have multiple different unit types like sword users, mages, archers, and each of these have different weapons that they can use. There's combat arts and battalions, and all of this keeps combat fresh and interesting. With regards to difficulty, there are a few different ways you can go. First, there's normal or hard difficulty. Now, I've played on hard and I found this to be just right for me. I've not tried normal, but I have heard that it's a little too easy. Now, if this is your first Fire Emblem game, then this could be the right option for you. But one thing to note about the difficulty is that you can change this later in the game, but only in the direction of making things easier. You can't pick normal at the beginning and then later change to hard. You can only do it the other way around. So if you're not sure which one is for you, I would recommend starting on hard, because at least you can make it easier later on if you need to. The other big choice to make is between casual mode and classic mode. This one is arguably a bigger choice because it's going to dictate how you play a lot more than you'd think. In casual mode, if your units die, they retreat and return for the next mission. But in classic mode, if your units die, they're dead. For good. Now, this is the mode that I chose, and in my opinion, it makes for a much more interesting experience. You end up trying to win without losing a single unit. This adds extra challenge. And this choice can't be changed later, so make sure that you give it some thought. If you think that this sounds too hard for you, the game does have a time rewinding system to help you out, so if a unit dies and you really didn't want that to happen, then it's called Time Pulse and it rewinds time to as many times as you want, so you can go back and have another go at saving that unit from death. And if you think all of this sounds too easy, well, there's another even tougher difficulty being added into the game at a later date, so you're covered there as well. The game is styled in a beautiful hand-drawn fashion, from the combat to exploring to really nicely animated cutscenes. Three Houses starts off with this scene that you're watching right now, and I really like the direction they went in. I think it's really nice. The fights in the game also look really good. With each attack, you zoom in from the overview onto the battlefield itself to see how they play out, and you can tell that they've taken advantage of the Switch hardware compared to something like the 3DS to make these really stand out. You can even stay zoomed in if you'd rather get a closer look, but this does make it harder to control your units, and honestly I've not used this much. The battalions that you pair your units with are visible when zoomed in, and they do a great job of making each fight actually seem like it's between two armies instead of just a few units on either side. One of the last things I want to talk about in the battle system is the music. I really like the music, especially in the second half of the game. It just has an epic feel to it that draws you into the battle. I mean, just listen to this and tell me that you don't feel inspired to take up arms against your enemy. The battles occur at least once per in-game month, but around that there are various other activities that you can be doing, all thanks to the new Persona 5 style planning system. Exploring the monastery allows you to partake in a range of activities that can either improve your combat skills, improve your skills as a professor, or improve your relationships with your students and others in the monastery. First of all, almost everyone wants to have a conversation with you. It can be a little daunting at first to see all those speech bubbles on the map, but after a few times you'll come to find it exciting to see what all your friends have to say. You can find lost items or gifts to give to people. These raise your friendship level. You can invite them for meals or for tea. You can cook with them, or you can even invite them singing. Now, while this may sound like it's not for everyone, trust me, you're going to want to do this. Increasing friendship level not only unlocks little extra conversations that help you get to know the characters, but all of your students fight better when they're next to the people that they have a better relationship. This ties it back into the combat system in a meaningful way and gives you a good reason to talk to everyone. Getting to know students from other houses also helps with recruiting them into your own house, so if you're torn between which house to choose because of one or two characters, you should know that it is possible to bring them in if you work towards it. But it doesn't end there, oh no! You've also got herb growing, which provides ingredients for the meals and give combat buffs. Fishing also gives ingredients and is a fun little minigame. There are 4 statues that you work towards rebuilding, which give bonuses like increased experience or better skills for your students. Tournaments, they allow you to pit your students against those from other houses, testing their skills. There's a prize for the winner, and again this increases your professor level, letting you do more and more activities per week as the game goes on. This may all sound like a big old mess of stuff to do, but don't worry. The game does an excellent job of introducing you to everything, and before long you'll know exactly what you want to do each week. But on the off chance that you're not sure what you want to do, the developers have included some stats for you, showing you what the player base has done on the particular week you're in, so you can get a hit on what you might want to do. Once a week you get to teach your students. Your professor level dictates the number of lessons you get, and these can be used to increase the students' skills in battle. You can train any skill, but each character has up to 2 goals, which get more experience over the week than any other skills. These are set by default, but you're able to change this at will, and the whole system is so open and versatile that it makes this a lot of fun. As you level up their skills, your students can take exams which unlock different class types for them to use. Your students sometimes come to you with suggestions for their goals, and you can accept or ignore this with no penalty. In my playthrough, Petra started off using the sword, but asked to use a bow as well and leaned towards becoming a thief class. I accepted this and started increasing her bow skills, but later down the line I decided I'd much rather have her on a flying mount. I changed her goals to lance and flying, which are the requirements to unlock the flying cavalry class, and eventually unlocked it. Now, here's where it gets even more fun. Once you have a class unlocked, you don't have to stick with any particular weapon. So, once Petra got on her Pegasus, I promptly switched her back to using a bow, and now she zooms around the battlefield peppering all my enemies with arrows. The only restrictions are that some classes can't use magic, and the magic skills you unlock are based on the individual characters. That's it. As far as I can tell, there are no more restrictions. The game even has a way to encourage you to try other skills for your characters called budding talents. These are extra abilities you can unlock by training a skill your student wouldn't normally be interested in. The freedom of this system really does lend itself to experimenting and multiple playthroughs. The game isn't so hard that you have to go down the optimal path for each character, so you can build whatever armor you want. Now, if you really don't want to do any of this, there is the option to just auto-complete it all, but I'd really advise against this. It's quite a big portion of the game, and it's really enjoyable planning what you want to do with each student, and then seeing those plans come to fruition throughout training. Seminars are a bit of hands-off activity, and involve you choosing a lecturer. They then hold a seminar about a skill they are particularly good at, and various students, teachers, and even the main character attend, depending on whether it's their goal to increase that skill. The attending students also get a motivation increase, which is needed when you do your own lessons. The final thing I'm going to talk about for Fire Emblem Three Houses is the story. Now, this is something that I'd like to spend a long time on, but I don't really want this video to spoil anything for anybody, so I'll keep it light. As I mentioned before, the game starts with your character being asked to become professor at the monastery, and then going on to choose a house. Which house you pick changes the story, and while I haven't played through them all yet, the ones I have played through have been really engaging. It does take a little bit of time to get going, but after a couple of hours I was hooked. The story is split into two. In the first half you're teaching at the monastery and some events are happening that build up a plot, and then at the end of this part there's a time jump of 5 years and the second half of the game has all-out war. The story contains mysteries and plots and goddesses, heroes, relics, emperors, and of course, fighting between them all. I really like my fantasy games and this story definitely scratches that itch for me. In terms of the amount of content this game has to offer, a single playthrough can take you anywhere from 40 to 60 hours. Just this makes it pretty good value for money in my opinion, but then you take into account the replayability. The customization and the 3 different houses means that this game makes it so easy to play more than just once. And the new Game Plus option really adds to this. There's also a 4th secret story option, but that involves major spoilers, so I won't go into it. So what's my conclusion? Is Fire Emblem Three Houses worth picking up? Well, if you've not already guessed it, the answer is definitely yes. This game is a great entry point to the series and is well worth your time and money. If I had to be really nitpicky and choose a flaw, well, the inventory system isn't great, but to be honest, I don't really want to. I'm having such a great time with the game and would recommend it to anyone who is even remotely interested. I actually think it's my favourite game of the year so far. Alright guys, I think that just about wraps up everything I wanted to say about Fire Emblem. Thank you so much for watching. For more content like this, please like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.